Story 1. A few years ago, I lived in a two-bedroom apartment with my kids, who were 8 and 10 at the time. My kids slept in a bunk bed, and when we first moved in, they would fight over who got the top bunk, and my youngest usually won. Their room had a sliding glass door that led to our balcony, which overlooked some woods. They had thick blinds that were always closed at night, and nobody else shared the balcony with us. We also lived in a very safe, nice part of town with nice older neighbors. One night, I tucked my kids in for the night, read them a few stories, and they're falling asleep. I kiss them good night and go to bed myself in the room right next to theirs. About an hour later, my youngest screams bloody murder and I hear a crash in their room. I jump up running into their room thinking my youngest must have somehow wiggled his way out of the top bunk. Sure enough, he's on the ground, head down and still screaming. I try to calm him down and ask if he's okay, thinking we would definitely need to go to the ER. He looks up at me, grabs onto me, and screams for me to take him out of there. So I go to the bathroom, which is right across the hall, and turn on all the lights to check him for injuries. Long story short, he's fine. Turns out he jumped from the top bunk and landed fine. I asked him why in the world he did that, and he finally blurts out, "To get away from the lady on the ceiling with the backwards head." My oldest was woken up at this point and was super annoyed at his little brother and told him there was nothing to be afraid of. I finally calmed him down, but from that night forward, he absolutely refused to sleep in that room and insisted on going to bed with me, which I was okay with. But I did try to talk him into sleeping in his own comfy bed. His older brother even offered to let him take the bottom bunk permanently, but he wouldn't budge. A month goes by, and my eldest still sleeps on the top bunk. One night, he wakes us up by jumping off the top bunk and rushing into my bedroom and jumping in the bed with me and his little brother. I ask him what's up, and he refuses to talk about it. I figure he must have watched a scary video or something that he shouldn't have at his cousin's house earlier, and just patted him on the back and told him everything is okay and he's safe with me. So all three of us guys are sleeping in my bed every night, and I try my best to get them to go back to bed in their bunks, and even go so far as to buy them cool tents that go over the tops of their beds with flashlights and comics. They love them and spend their time in there, but only while it's still light outside. I even buy them 2 pet mice with a nice big cage, thinking that having other living creatures in the room with them would be comforting. They love animals, but it doesn't work. My oldest finally tells me he saw a shadow crawling on the ceiling that looked like a woman with long black hair. He said he was woken up by a flashing white light and thought his brother was turning his flashlight on and off, but when he looked closer, it was coming from the closet, and he saw the black figure crawling on the ceiling and just noped out of there. I was like, great, 2 kids who are scared of a monster in the closet. I talked to other parents and my ex, and we all tried to reassure them that they were safe and there's no such thing as monsters. My ex and I were about to take them to a therapist. We were concerned there might be something more going on with them. Well, a few nights later, on a Friday night, Saturday morning, around 3 a.m., the boys are asleep in my bed, oldest in the middle, youngest on the far left, next to my bedroom window, and I was on the far right, facing the open bedroom door. Normally we would close the bedroom door, but we had just had an epic Nerf gun fight before going to bed, and all the doors were open. It was a great night. Anyway, I'm laying in bed snoring when I suddenly wake up. I open my eyes, and as they're trying to focus, I notice a white flashing light reflecting on the wall outside my bedroom. I think it must be one of their flashlights losing its battery power or something, and debate on whether I really wanted to get out of bed and turn it off or just roll over and ignore it when I see the source of the light is slowly moving down the hall, getting closer to my bedroom door. I immediately thought intruder and quietly got out of bed and crept towards the doorway, trying to see what was going on. I peek out into the hallway, and the light is flashing close to the ground from my kids' room. I don't hear footsteps, nothing. I look in their room, and the light stops. I'm freaked out, so I flip on the light switch and see nothing. The mice are chilling, nothing out of place, and I went over their entire floor looking for the source of that light and found nothing. We ended up moving out a couple of months later, and the boys got separate bedrooms and weren't afraid anymore. My oldest is 15 now, and I told him this story back in January, and he turned white as a ghost, went silent, and just stared at me. I was like, "What's the matter, kid?" He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're lucky you didn't look up." Story 2. The first time I saw her, I was 6. We were playing the opposite of hide and seek. One person hides while everyone else looks, and once you find the person, you hide with them until there's only one person looking. It was my turn to hide, and chose to hide under the stairs where my dad kept all the camping gear because there were lots of things to hide under and behind, etc. There was only one person left. With all of us crammed in the room under the stairs, the last person left was sitting on the stairs above us, my brother, and we could hear him yelling in his defeat to get us to surrender. In my hiding spot, I could see the door that led out, and it was cracked just a little bit. A girl about my age poked her head in the room and waved at me. I had said aloud, "What's your name?" With no reply, she vanished, which prompted me to follow after her, yelling at her to come back, ultimately giving up our hiding spot. Everyone under the stairs, brothers and cousins, started yelling at me, asking what the hell I was doing and who I was talking to. Nobody else had seen her, and we couldn't find her upon searching. The next time I saw her, I had gone over to the neighbor's house to play with the boy my age because they had gotten a new puppy. The neighbor boy had 8 siblings, all boys, and the oldest son had come home to visit. He came into the basement where we were playing. Shortly after, I heard my name being called from upstairs by a girl. I had figured it was one of the neighbor girls, as it was common to have friends show up uninvited in my neighborhood. Everyone had an open door policy. The same girl I had seen was standing at the top of the stairs. She told me to call over to my house and have my older brother come walk me home right now. We lived right next door. I didn't at all feel scared and just did what she told me right then and there. My older brother was furious and couldn't understand why I couldn't just do the 15-second walk home by myself. I have multiple instances seeing and hearing from her when in the presence of that older neighbor boy, always telling me it was time to go home or not leave my brother's side or be alone with him ever. I'm not sure why I had never questioned or feared her. I was one stubborn child and hated when told what to do. At the age of 8, I was sleeping when I had gotten shaken awake. It was her. She told me I needed to be really quiet and go wake my dad up because someone was outside my window. I did what I was told and went to wake my dad. He got his gun out of the safe by his bed and instructed me to stay with my mom. A few seconds later, he started screaming at my mom to call 911. Sure enough, there was someone outside my window. When the officers were questioning me, I mentioned the little girl, which freaked my parents out. I told them about the girl for the first time, as well as all the times I've seen her. They took me in to see the bishop as I was about to get baptized and due to meet with him anyway, and instructed to tell him all about her and when I've seen her, which started me on all types of church therapy crap and vows of secrecy for getting a gift from God and blah blah blah. I saw her on the way home from my boyfriend's house one night in high school. I was driving at around midnight through a back road that had trees on all sides. I was coming up to an intersection where I had no stop signs, but the perpendicular road did. She walked out from the tree line in front of me, causing me to slow to a stop just before the intersection. As soon as I stopped, a car blows through the stop signs just in front of me, scaring the hell out of me. I turned back to where she was, and she just smiled and walked back into the tree line. Had I not stopped, I would have been hit on my side of the car by the person who blew through the stop sign. I've seen her in many other occasions. Call it hallucinations, call it divine intervention, call it whatever you want. But I'm grateful for her. I've never seen her and been scared. More at peace, kind of like seeing an old friend. Story 3. A couple years ago, I was up late watching a movie one night. I'm talking like 1 a.m. here. It was like June or July maybe. There's a knock on my door. Scared the hell out of me. I flick on my porch light and look out the window. There's some dude just standing there. Just some regular looking guy in a gray hoodie. I live in a small town with an almost non-existent crime rate, so I don't think too much about it, but I'm still cautious because this is still weird. I live literally right next door to our local sheriff's department. At first, I'm thinking it might just be somebody needing help, in which case I could direct him to the station super easily. I decide to crack open the door to see what's going on. The television and light in my living room were both on. The guy can clearly see that someone is home and awake. Probably why he knocked on my door. The guy tells me he's going door to door asking for donations to replace Christmas gifts that were lost in a house fire earlier that day. Reminder, this was in the middle of summer, in the middle of the night, not even close to Christmas. The guy didn't look or sound high or drunk or anything, and his clothes were pretty clean from what I could see, so I don't think he was homeless either. The way he was acting and talking, he seemed perfectly lucid and with it. It was just what he said to me that was super weird. I tell the guy I can't help him. He thanks me anyway and walks away. I immediately called the police, told the person I spoke to exactly what had happened, just in case this guy was up to something sketchy. This is where it gets a little creepy. Well, creepier. Before I can tell him my address, the dispatcher asks me if I live in a certain area that's actually about a 15-minute drive away from where I am. I tell him no. I'm just right next door to them. I ask him why he asked. He says that not 5 minutes before I called, he received another call from someone in the aforementioned area reporting the exact same thing I had just called in about. The description of the guy sounded almost identical to the guy who came to my door. The dispatcher said there were no fires reported that day. I never saw the guy again and never heard any more about it. Story 4. At my old place, I was up late one night in my living room when I saw a shadow of a man appear in front of my door. I had a glass pane door with frosted glass, so I could see a clear outline of the man. He then proceeded to try to open my door, and when he noticed it was locked, he just stood still and silent in front of my door. I was freaking terrified. I ended up quietly crawling to my dining room and calling the police. Another time, is sometimes I suffer from sleep paralysis, and a few years ago I had come home from work very late and laid down on the ottoman in my living room with my back to the closed French doors leading to the dining room. As I started dozing off, I could feel the sleep paralysis setting in, so I tried to fight it, but I ultimately lost, and my body became paralyzed. And as soon as that happened, I felt it. Now, anytime I suffered a paralysis episode, there would be a thing or entity that would enter my room. I can only describe it as monster-like. The majority of the time, I couldn't see it with my eyes, but I could feel its presence and knew it was there and it would manipulate things in the room. I have only seen it 3, maybe 4 times. On this particular night, I could feel it behind me in the dining room, but since my back was to the doors, I could not see it. But then, I hear the door opening slowly. It was a slow, long creak. At this point, I'm freaking out, trying to fight the paralysis as the door continues to open slowly. After what seems like forever, I'm finally able to move again, and I jump up and turn around, and the French doors are wide open. This is the part that freaked me the hell out. You experience hallucinations during sleep paralysis, and last time I checked, hallucinations cannot manipulate the real world. I did not sleep at all that night. I've had all types of scary hallucinations due to the paralysis in the past, but they've never been anything like that. Luckily, I have not suffered any episodes since then. Story 5. In our dorm at the university, we had a living room, bathroom, and 2 rooms with 2 beds each. It was late afternoon, not yet the middle of the night or something, and my roommates were all in class or out somewhere. Our apartment door was locked, and I sat in my room, ate dinner, and spoke to my mother via a video call. Previously, my roommates had often reported weird things that had happened when they were home alone, but I always thought that maybe they were trying to scare me or something. As I sat there and was in the middle of talking about my day, I suddenly heard some kind of loud and heavy breathing in the living room. I had previously told my mom about the strange experiences of my roommates, which included said heavy breathing, and I was like, "Do you hear that? That's exactly what the others were talking about. I'm home alone." My mother couldn't hear anything and insisted I check what was going on. Meanwhile, it sounded like someone opened the fridge. I panicked and really didn't want to leave my room. My mother told me again to stop being ridiculous and opened my room door to check what was going on. After much back and forth, I got up, slowly opened the door, and peeked into the living room. Everything was calm and completely peaceful. The sounds had stopped. Confused but feeling braver now, I left my room, checked all the other rooms, and made sure, once again, the front door was locked. I went back to my room, closed the door, and the noise in the living room picked up again. Looking at my mom, who had been waiting for me, her expression was what scared me most that day, followed by her words. "So, I guess it wasn't a black-haired roommate that just walked by?" She saw somebody while I was checking the rooms. Story 6. Throughout my life, my mom has regularly been seen in places that she hasn't been. These occurrences were very popular in one particular house that we rented when I was about 15, 16. I was chilling in the upstairs lounge area watching Say Yes to the Dress, thinking that I was home alone. I remember seeing my mom come upstairs, make direct eye contact with me, but completely ignored my calling out, "Hey, Mom, didn't know you were home," and walked straight into my younger brother's bedroom and closed the door. I thought it was odd, and it definitely caught my attention because she was walking quite stiffly, almost robotically, but I was enjoying my snacks and TV. About 10 minutes later, I hear my mom come in the front door and yell up to ask if I have any clothes to go in the machine, as she needed to put on a load of washing. I sit in silence, thinking about why she didn't ask me when she came upstairs, and realized that I never saw her leave my brother's room. She thought I was ignoring her, so she came upstairs to ask me again, and I freaked out because she wasn't even wearing the same clothes I saw her in. Turns out she had only just returned from lunch with her friends when I heard her opening the front door. In that same house, she's also been seen by multiple people in other rooms where she's actually outside having a cigarette, or not even home. All descriptions have been that her movements were really stiff. It's like you can see her moving, but not hear her. And her face is completely stiff, but she always makes eye contact. On a separate occasion, but during the same week, she appeared in a photo that she wasn't in, where she was actually sitting in a chair behind the person taking the photo. The photo shows her wearing exactly the same clothes in the exact same sitting position on her phone, but below her knees had been completely cut off. Story 7. My freshman year of college back in 2011, I moved into a house in a different state with my sister and 3 other roommates. We all got along pretty well, and even had a running joke about a ghost that we nicknamed Jessie, because the house would make random noises, as houses sometimes do. Keep in mind this house was fairly new, couldn't have been more than 10 years old at the time. I remember one night we even did the whole knock once if you're a male, twice if you're a female, and something knocked twice. So we renamed the ghost Jane. I remember all of us laughing it off and thinking it was a weird coincidence. Well, one of my roommates said she had seen dead people her whole life. I'm very sciencey and ended up getting my degree in biology, so I took her stories lightly and didn't really believe in ghosts. She said she had seen this little boy in her room growing up. For years he would show up next to her bed, and she'd run into her mom's room and sleep in there. She could describe him in very exceptional detail, exactly what he wore, his expression, eye color, etc. Apparently, she had seen stuff in this house, but honestly, I didn't pay much mind to it. I was 19 and very into my own thing back then. Anyways, there were 2 bedrooms upstairs, and we got a new roommate in one of them. One day, I was sitting downstairs in the living room watching a movie, thinking I was the only one home. There were no other cars in the driveway except mine. I hear this sound right above me in the room of the new roommate. It sounded like boxes sliding across the floor, and was pretty loud enough for me to pause the movie and go up there to see if he needed help. I knocked on the door a few times, but no one answered. I could still hear boxes sliding across the floor, like very obviously something was being physically moved on the other side of the door. Not sure why, but I had a weird feeling and just opened the door. No one was there. The sound of the boxes stopped immediately, like as soon as I opened the door. I walked around the room, and sure enough, no one was there. In fact, there was only one box and a couple of other small items. Then I just got freaked out and bolted outside. I could hear the boxes sliding from outside. I remember that room always being colder, and whoever was in there had to have a heater, even though the house had central heat and AC. Never thought about it until after that experience. Looking back, I think that house was haunted. I have more stories about weird occurrences, but that one stands out the most.